Human beings are searching for the personal experience of reality. They are seeking to come to understand themselves, to find a reason for their own existence.
And so you go round and round and round, ever chasing the illusion that there is something outside yourself, outside your here and now, to be attained that will make things better.
No guru, no method, no teacher, and no nothing else either.
All right, welcome everybody. We have a special guest with us today. We have Colby the Psychic Rebel. Colby, how you doing?
I am doing well, Ross. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm doing really great. Kind of a easier day for me today than usual, so it's pretty nice. First question right out of the gate, what are you grateful for?
I am honestly so grateful that I've been able to kind of find my life purpose relatively quickly, right? You know, you have these journeys, you have these life experiences, and some people finish not even knowing what their life purpose is. So I'm happy that I was able to discover it and then go for it.
Yeah, that is nice. It's definitely something that I feel like I've tapped into relatively early. I'm in my 30s and I know what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, that is something to be grateful for, I guess, because a lot of people look for it, like you said, and never do find it.
Yeah, they just get a little lost in what they're doing, a little lost in, they spend so much time trying to figure out what it is rather than just doing something.
And that's the truth, yeah. For me too, it's funny. It's like when I stopped looking is when I found it.
Yeah. Well, mine was just so different because I guess I wasn't really thinking that what I do was a career. So when I found out that you actually can do it as a career, I was a little surprised too. That I was like, okay, I guess I'll be doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm sure that we're going to get into that with some of the questions. Before we get there, what quotes do you feel most moved by, 2 or 3? And can you explain what they mean to you?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs quotes, you know, the round peg and the square hole and be the rebels, just because his mindset and what he talks about is so important, you know, that we be individuals, that our uniqueness is what is special, and not to just kind of go with the flow because you've been told to. So I really love that. I think just his entrepreneur spirit and his mind are just so inspiring. I have his quotes here up on the wall, so I really do love it. And Michael Jordan has got one that basically talks about, you know, I've failed more times than I've succeeded. And again, I think it's just about that not quitting. So those are my favorite ones. Einstein, I believe it's Einstein, did this quote though about everything being spiritual. And you know, here's a science guy. Here's a guy that you would think everything needs to make sense. And basically he's saying nothing makes sense unless you have spirit. And so that to me is also a really good one. So I would say those are my top faves.
Those are all really good quotes, and I can connect with all of those. I like them.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
So can you explain who you are and what you do?
Gosh, who am I, right? Well, you know, I'm Colby. My name is Colby Rebel, and I am a psychic medium. And what that means for someone who doesn't know is I have this ability to tune into someone's soul and be able to figure out what they want, what does their soul want, what is going to happen in their life. And I have this ability to connect to spirit on the other side, loved ones on the other side. And, you know, I'm never going to have all the answers. I wish I did. I mean, that'd be pretty great. But the fact that this works and the fact that that gift is there is so remarkable to me. It really, really is. So it's quite an honor to do what I do, but that's who I am, and I teach the work. So it's important to teach it. I help try to inspire people, and just reassure them that there's so much more than this physical life that we have.
Mm. Yeah, that's really awesome. I definitely know for me, like working with spirit and stuff like that, it is something that I have to teach, like what I learn as I go along, because that's kind of how I get to keep it, I guess, is by giving it away.
Yes, yeah, you do. And you know, I remember when I first was told kind of to start teaching, it wasn't my idea really, to be honest. I just was looking to do it. And my teacher at the time was doing these master teacher applications. It was a 9-month program. Oh, so rigorous. And she said, Colby, when are you going to get your application in? And I was like, I'm not teaching. And she's like, yes, you are. And so I did it. And, you know, to be honest, I'm so passionate about teaching. I don't think I would have realized it had she not said to me, where's your application? So I love teaching. There's just this, it is very easy. It's easy to kind of see things. And when you teach, it really forces you to, have the self-discipline to reflect upon yourself. You know, are you practicing what you're teaching? Are you understanding it? And you have to look at things in such a different way, because you have to be able to break them down in a really easy way for a student to understand. So just in all of that, it kind of helps yourself grow in a lot of ways. It's kind of selfish.
Yeah, it's like selfishly selfless, essentially.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I love it. And when you see someone hone their own gift because, you know, you've been teaching them and helping them, and you see them build their own self-confidence, it's beautiful. It's remarkable to be able to see people grow.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine. Like I've taught certain things that I've been through on like a very removed basis, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm working with people. So maybe I'll see that in the years coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great though. You'll love it.
I can only imagine. So like this is like one of the questions that really isn't on the thing, but I still want to ask it. Like, when did you kind of find this gift, and like when did you start following that area of your life?
Well, it's kind of like two different circumstances. My first experience with spirit was at the age of 4. So, I remember it very, very vividly. I was put to bed. My mom put me and my sister to bed, and we shared a room. And my grandfather came to the side of my bed and talked to me. And he told me to get out of bed and go tell my mom what he had said. So I got out of bed and I went and I told my mom. And I remember her saying, "Who told you that?" And I says, "Grandpa told me." She's like, "Where's Grandpa?" And I says, "He's in the room, Mommy." And I remember her just kind of having this tear come down her eye. And what I didn't know at that time is he had passed away a week before that. So that was our first experience with spirit. And then my mom would tell me, you know, she would be kind of in the kitchen working and just hear me on the front lawn talking away. And she'd go check on me. And she said I'd be having a full-on conversation with somebody else. And one time she asked me, you know, who I was talking to. And I told her it was my friend, and look at her, and, you know, didn't she like her dress? Look how pretty the dress was. So I think it's just, there was a lot of those things happening as a kid, and I never outgrew it. So I'd always get hits of information with people all the time, but I just didn't understand. I just didn't realize that not everybody was doing that, or that it was out of the norm. So it wasn't until about 2007 that there was just a few back-to-back incidences that were so phenomenally crazy that it made me go, you know what, I think I have to change what I'm doing with my life. And one was I had this premonition, this feeling that my neighbor was dying. And it was just so crazy. So I was studying for the CPA exam in my townhome, and we shared a joint wall. And I didn't know him real well, to be honest. He's like in his 50s. And my heart started racing and pounding. And I call a neighbor. I said, oh, I think something's wrong with Randy. And we go to knock on his door, and there's no answer. And his sliding glass door is open. So I just go inside. Again, all of that in itself, I think, is just kind of weird and crazy. You know, why would you go in someone's house that you don't even know?
Mm-hmm.
And we ran around the house. He wasn't even in there. So that was very awkward. And the next day he knocked on my door and said, well, I've been in the hospital. So I thought that that was strange. 2 weeks later, I have the same feeling, and it's even more intense. And I didn't want to call the neighbor because she already knew I was wrong the first time. So I called 911. I mean, that to me is just insane. I just don't, obviously I wasn't being rational about my decision making at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you would call 911 if you don't even know if he's in that house. I didn't even know. So we called 911. The officers showed up. They asked me if they wanted me to break down the door. And I'm like, God, no, don't break down his door. And there was a tiny little window. And I said, well, let's go through the window. And they lifted me up and they put me through the window. And I walk into his living room. And there he was in his recliner with his eyes open, and he was not breathing. Mm. And in that moment, I felt such a sense of calm, such a sense of peace, like, okay, you're not alone anymore. And I really felt called there. I mean, whether that was his mom telling me, hey, don't leave my son alone, because she was in spirit, I'm not sure. But that was a pivotal moment of knowing that someone was going to die and taking such drastic steps to be there. It's just crazy. So that was it. That was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Pretty crazy.
One of the things I want to ask, and I feel like you kind of touched on this, so it is something that you had to refine and have somebody like help you understand and learn how to utilize it in a better way, correct? Okay.
Yeah. I am a massive, massive advocate for training. If people are going to do psychic work, intuitive work, mediumship work, there is a phenomenal amount of personal responsibility and integrity and ethics that are absolutely required to do this work. And I hear people all the time give readings, and it makes me cringe because they're not working ethically. They're not working with integrity. You should not be telling someone that they're going to get cancer. You should not be telling someone that you foresee a passing. You should not be telling someone what to do with their life. And I see it over and over. And so through the training, just in itself, the gifts themselves, right? So for most people who know or don't know, the gifts are seeing. Some people call that clairvoyance. Clairaudience means you hear. Claircognizance means you know. Clairsentient means you feel. So those are the kind of toolbox that psychics, mediums, intuitives will use. Those are like muscles. So you can make them stronger. The same as doing a bicep curl is going to give you a nice little bicep shape. Flexing these muscles and honing them and strengthening them will actually make you a better light worker. And then on top of that, when you train, you can actually train to understand, how do we say something? What do we do with something? You know, just to kind of do it professionally. You know, people don't realize the industry itself doesn't have the best reputation because, and the word charlatan comes up a lot, right? And that really comes from historical, because people were not being professional about the work. And I do think that that's changing. And I do think that the training and the education around it are very, very important. So I trained around the world. I didn't just train with one teacher. I trained with teachers around the world. I think I was looking for someone to tell me that I shouldn't be doing it. and they never did. They kept saying, oh, yeah, it was quite the opposite. So I'm like, but, you know, training will help you hone your own gifts, and not only hone them, but give you the confidence to then share them and give you the knowledge to know how best to share them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons I ask that is like my grandma on my mom's side has a history of psychic things, and one of my aunts did as well. And both of them talked about the need to kind of push that gift to the side. And I feel it was because they didn't have the training to actually understand it and utilize it. And it was very overwhelming for them to have those experiences. Is that something you've encountered with other people before as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the experiences can be phenomenally, they can make you really think you're crazy. I mean, mostly they can make you think you're crazy, or they can feel overwhelming, because especially when you're connecting to spirit, you will naturally, your heart races, you feel a little anxious. It has a very similar feeling to fear. So what happens is that's why people, they say, oh, I don't want to connect. It's negative. Oh, it's only because they're having a physiological response. But that physiological response is just them feeling the energy. And they're interpreting it to be negative, but that isn't the case. The case is literally they're just feeling the vibration. So if they can understand it and then learn how to communicate, it would actually be a lot more peaceful and calm. But yeah, and your grandparents and your family, you know, in that time, it certainly wasn't accepted. I mean, you know, that's in the time where, you know, people were going to work, getting training. It's just a different philosophy, a different time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry for going off on that tangent with everything. It was
No,
just
please.
like I really had to ask. I was just super curious.
Yes.
I feel like you answered this question like that you felt you were different as a kid somewhat, because you talked about having those psychic experiences early on.
Yeah. I was, you know, I'll tell you what, I always thought I was different. I didn't understand maybe how, but what was really great, which is a nice perspective, is a couple of years ago, my sister and I, after coming out of the spiritual closet and doing all of this work, and she said, we were in the car once, and she said, you know, growing up, I always knew you were so different. She goes, and I didn't know what it was. She goes, I knew that it wasn't a mental thing because you got really good grades, which I was a top student. So, but it just shows that even from her point of view, there was something very, I don't want to say off, but something very out of the norm about who I was or how I processed information. So I think a lot of times kids get diagnosed with certain conditions when truly I feel that they're probably gifted, and that's just not, maybe that's not being diagnosed. And maybe if it was gifted and it was honed, that would actually help that kid along a lot on their own path.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, on my own personal journey, I was diagnosed as bipolar, and I used a lot of different substances to kind of deal with that. And within the past couple of years, I've stopped using substances. I've actually stopped, with the doctor's blessing, stopped taking medication for bipolar disorder. And the way that I connect with everything is way different. And I have a profound sense of intuitiveness and knowing through spirit that like has shown itself to me, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's like in tribal cultures, I'm sure you already know this too, but like they view that as the get like birth of a healer, those kind of traumatic instances that our culture just medicates and sweeps under the rug.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, I think there is this, at least there's this awakening that seems to be happening. And if it's not a full-on awakening, it certainly is a discussion to open it up, right? Because we're at a time where people are talking about the issues at hand. They're talking about gifts. They're talking about us trusting ourselves. People are not just following blindly anymore. So, I do think we're making progress, and it's very exciting to be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. Do you have like any other odd experiences you might be willing to discuss besides those like first kind of peeks behind the curtain?
Well, there's another one that's super fascinating, and that is, again, quite a few years ago now, a man stood at the end of my bed. Now, I never knew who my father was, and it was certainly like this really weird thing in my life. Like, I had been lied to about who he was. It was just such an odd story. And I really wanted to know who he was, and I just kind of couldn't get a straight answer out of anybody. And one night, this man stands at the end of my bed and he says, "I'm your father. Go down and check the computer." So I did. And just remarkably, I had found, and I knew there was like suspicion of one person, so I kind of knew his name. So just through searching the name and going through name records, I found a son of his that had the same name and literally was in the same town that I grew up in. And so I reached out to this kid. He's about 10 years younger than me. So I reached out to him and just oddly enough said, I have this feeling we have the same dad. And I gave him what I knew. And he was so sweet. I mean, he was so nice. He's like, "What do you need from me?" And I said, "Well, I need your DNA." And he did. We did a DNA test. And so if you are half siblings with someone, your DNA would have to be at least 25%, right? Because of the way it works. Our DNA came back, and just almost as such a stamp from spirit, such a stamp of, I'm going to not only show you who your father is, I'm going to make it unbelievably undeniable that I'm your father. And it came back 88.3%.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, that is, considering we have two different mothers, that's phenomenal. It just means we have a lot of the father's DNA, but how lucky so that is how, and he sent me pictures of them. So the first pictures I ever got of my father actually came from my half brother. And I look like my dad. I look and that was really peaceful. That brought me a lot of peace because I didn't really feel like I looked like anyone in my family. So it was really nice to kind of get that closure. But that is a crazy story because it was my dad in spirit that ended up showing me he was my dad.
Yeah, that is really awesome.
It's pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah. I feel like you've answered this question too. It's interesting talking to you because your story is very condensed, but I'm sure there's a lot to unpack. But my questions like aren't prepared for it because you know yourself so well. I guess it's interesting. What superpowers do you possess, or like what superpower would you want?
I would want the superpower of patience. I would really love that superpower. I am phenomenally envious and grateful to those that are patient and that continue to be patient even when they're feeling tested. My patience has gotten a lot better, and that makes me proud of myself, but I'm just not naturally a patient person. And so it's a battle because, we all have to be able to find ways to accept ourselves for who we are, not constantly beating ourselves up for anything we find to be a flaw or inadequate, But I am envious of the superpower of patience. For the superpower that I think I do behold, it's a double-edged sword, but I have phenomenal hearing out of my left ear. It is my spirit ear. So that this is the ear that spirit will talk to me. So with that being said, it is so, I can hear everything. I can hear conversations in other rooms. I can hear vibration. And so I live in an apartment building, and I can hear everything. I can just hear when the client comes. Like, so, I'll be inside my space and I won't see, but I hear, oh, they're here. Like, I'll go outside, and so many times I'll wave to them and they're just shocked because we've never met one another, but I know that that's the client. It's just, so that's a fun little thing. And that is just, like I said, so I've always had this clear audience. I've heard spirits since being a kid, but through the training, through the practice, it has gotten so much stronger. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword because, it is one of those things that if you go to a restaurant or somewhere busy or somewhere that's just normally kind of conversational, it will feel phenomenally loud to me.
Oh, that's really interesting. You touched on clairaudience again, and I've never actually had the opportunity to ask somebody about this. But for me personally, certain times I will hear certain words, or certain words will come up in conversation on music, and just however, and they'll seem almost like they're italicized, like when I hear them, or like in bold, and it stands out to me. Is that something similar to that, or is that something different?
Absolutely. So it could be either a psychic hit or a spirit hit. So you'd have to kind of see how is it coming about. The reason I say psychic is, and it could be spirit too. It just depends on how you're getting it. But the same as so for instance, if you were to do clairvoyance, right? That's seeing. I'm always telling people, if you're looking to connect to your guides or you're looking for an answer, you have to be visual to everything. And that means looking at a billboard, and maybe there's a word that pops out on a billboard, and that's your answer. Or you'll see a word in one place and then you'll see it again in another place, right? That synchronicity is your message, is your sign. So if you're talking to someone and a word pops out to you that you hear, it's clearly either an answer or something for you to probe further. Like, oh, well, what does that mean? Or is that, so you have to connect the logic, connecting the logic, meaning having that conversation to figure out what is that word for, what does it mean, what is it about. But absolutely, yeah, it's probably just your clairaudience opening up for you.
Okay, yeah, cool. Because I do what you said pretty much. Once it happens, I was just curious. It's just wanted outside perspective.
Yeah.
What circumstances in particular do you feel shaped your life?
Gosh, I think there's probably so many. There's a lot where I grew up very poor, and so there's a lot of things. It's very interesting. So when I was little, I was very pigeon-toed, right? And they used to have this bar. They have shoes with a metal bar that they would put on kids' feet, and you wouldn't be able to move. You'd have to hop. You couldn't walk. And they don't even use that anymore because they actually realized it was very detrimental to the growth of the feet. But back in the day, they used it. So I had that, and I still remember hopping around and all of those things. Here's what's interesting. For me, it was a bar on my feet, and I had to deal with it. And that was just how I was going to get about things. I met a lady a few years ago that she was sharing this story in front of a group of people, and she was talking about the bar. But she said the exact same thing. We had the exact same situation, the exact same treatment, yet she referred to herself as being crippled. And I thought that was phenomenal. How are you perceiving yourself? Because there's no way at that time I would have ever thought that would have been considered crippled. I didn't think I was crippled. My family didn't think I was crippled. So what are we telling ourselves? And that was such a good lesson as to, are you going to be the victim? How are you going to perceive yourself going through your journey? So, those circumstances, or growing up really, really poor, or being bullied when I was a kid. I was bullied. Kids can be so mean, right? And I had really bad teeth. And So I'd get teased for having really bad teeth. And my family was so poor, and they scraped together any money they had to be able to get me braces. So now I get braces because I was getting teased so bad. Well, now I get teased because I have braces. It was like you just couldn't win. But those circumstances all shaped my life because they made me a survivor. They made me a fighter. They made me perceive myself to be stronger than what the outside world was telling me who I was. I was able to discover, who am I? I'm not going to let you tell me who I am. I'm going to know who I am.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. And I like how you really talk about perception on the one hand with the bar, because perception of reality is ridiculous. How
isn't that I would have never thought to refer to myself that way. So it was shocking. I was like, oh, come on. Like, listen, if we're going to be cripple, I know there's cripple, but you had a bar on your feet. It's not that bad.
Yeah, right.
So
also, like, changing how you see yourself and not letting your own experience be authored by other people. I really relate to that very largely on my own journey. So I have a lot of respect for that. And I think that's like one of the things that anybody has access to do if they're just willing to be like, give some self-love to themselves and be like, yeah, this is who I am, and what they think doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's so funny. So just to show you your own little intuitive psychic hit, today, I do coffee with Colby every morning at 10 a.m. And today the topic was self-care. And is it self-care or selfish, and how to take care of yourself and why it's important. So that was you just tuning in.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of the things I've really learned is like I work on my own business and all this other stuff and like try to help other people, is if I don't take care of myself first, I literally cannot help another person at all.
Yeah. There are times I usually have a lot of energy. I can hold this space a lot, especially for working with clients and students, which is incredible. But there are just certain times where I don't know, I'll be going, and then all of a sudden spirit just has me hit a wall, and I just know that I need to book a day off or take 2 days off and really decompress. Like, I have to do that. Otherwise the work won't be as good. It won't be of the level it needs to be. I won't be at the level. And like I was saying today, if we're too fatigued, we cannot be of service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something we kind of talked about this before we started recording. That's something that like our culture forgets overall too.
Yeah, absolutely. It is work, and unfortunately, people aren't taking time to rest and enjoy life.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like you answered this question too. Like you're very good at like well-rounding your answers, I would say.
Thanks.
What positive lessons did you learn from your negative experiences?
Well, you know what? I'll share something else because I think a lot of your listeners can probably relate to this. I'll share kind of a different story. So before I decided, or before Spirit decided that I was going to be a full-time psychic medium, I was actually a tax manager for a public CPA firm, and I did that for 14 years. So I ran a tax firm. I did tax returns, tax advice. I mean, it's hardcore, and it is a good 80 hours a week during tax season. I was just thinking of this the other day. I mean, I would be at work at 6 or 7 in the morning, and I would get out at 10 at night, and 7 days a week. It was no life at all. And when I really discovered that this was my purpose, I had such a sense of grief and resentment and remorse that I had wasted 14 years. How could I have done that to myself? What was I doing? And I decided that that wasn't going to be the story that I was going to tell myself. I actually ended up writing a book to help other light workers build a spiritual business. So it ended up taking all that tax knowledge and helping people. Hey, this is what you need to know. This is the kind of entity you can have. Is that deductible? You should know. How do you do this or that? Like, so I actually wrote a book, which I would not have been able to do to help other people. And it also made me realize it makes me such a professional in this line of work. I mean, not just professional because of the training. I am a professional business person. And some people have a hard time dealing with that because it's spiritual, right? And so a lot of people don't have that business background. But when I want to work with someone, you know, we have a contract, you know, the venue is set up, everything. I'm such a perfectionist about it. But again, I realize that I have this passion for bringing professionalism into the light worker space, because I really have this vision that light workers, healers, psychics, mediums, energy masters, anything, we can be perceived as professional as doctors and lawyers and accountants if we raise the bar and if we execute the professionalism. I think then it's going to be a much more reputable career for us to have.
Yeah, that's very well said. I definitely think that learning to channel your entirety of your experience and finding the benefit and the strength in it is crucial to having a happy life. And that's awesome that you were able to channel it into a book like that. I definitely need to buy your book, because as like things continue with my business, and it is spiritually focused, it's like certain things I just don't know how to progress with. So
yeah.
What is the name of your book so the listeners can check it out too?
It is called Leap of Faith, How to Build Your Spiritual Business, and it's by Colby the Rebel. So I have it over there. It's really cute. You want me to get the cover? I'll get you the cover.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Okay, hang on. It's real cute. Hang on.
Oh, I like it. The Leap of Faith.
There you go. So, and so here's what's interesting. Can you see the cover?
Yeah, it's like the leap of faith, basically.
Yeah. So what was, just again to show you kind of how our lives intersect with one another and how people pop in. In one of the trainings I had done, I had gone to the Arthur Findlay College, which is in Stansted, England, and it really is one of the premier places of study. And so I took a course there and I met this girl named Lizzie, and she just happens to be an artist. So when I had this idea for the book, I thought to myself, I need Lizzie to do the cover. So that's also this gorgeous story, right? So I'm taking this leap of faith myself. I go and I take this training. I then go and meet this girl who then ends up designing the cover of my book. And, you know, it's just this kind of beautiful story of how we're going to meet people on this path. And those people are going to help us. They're going to give us a lending hand. They're going to help take us to the next step, the next level. And we're going to build lasting relationships.
Absolutely. And is that book available on Amazon or on your website, both? Or?
Yeah, it's on Amazon and it's on my website. Yes. So, but it's super, super easy to get.
Okay, since we're talking about it too, why don't you throw out like your links and stuff, and then we'll get back to another part of the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is colbyrebel.com, and I'm on social media. So I have Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. It is @Psychic Rebel. So there you can see my Facebook page and my Twitter and my Instagram. So those are the best places to find me. And I've got a radio show. It's every Thursday nights. If you like my Facebook page, I'm wearing a black jacket. It will actually live stream on that page on Thursday nights at 5 p.m. It's over at UBN Studios. But that's always a really fun, because I do kind of what you do. I'll interview some people that are making a difference.
Yeah, awesome. I'll make sure to put your links down below in the description also, so people can get to stuff easier.
Thank you. Thanks.
No, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of a fun question. What songs or bands have lyrics that most resonate with you currently?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I mean, I hate to say it because it is kind of an old school, but you know, journeys don't stop believing.
Hmm.
When that thing, I can listen to that anytime, anywhere, and it just gets me pumped. And it just gets me connected. There's just something about that song that says, no matter what's happening, don't ever give up. And when you're doing this, when people are embarking on their path and embarking on their journey, there's a lot of questions you have for yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Am I crazy? What if I make a mistake? How am I going to make money? How am I going to survive? What if people don't like me? I mean, there's so many things that we bog our mind down with, and we can get easily discouraged if we allow it. And a song like Don't Stop Believing just says you can do anything. Like, you've got this. And so I always like that song.
Yeah, it's really inspirational, a good reminder, because I'm like in that phase right now where like I took the leap, I haven't landed yet. It's like,
yeah. And you take the leap and you're saying, well, how am I going to pay the rent?
yeah, I'm fortunate my living situation is kind of taken care of, but it's just getting some returns on some of the labor, I guess. Like I just published my first book, all this stuff going on, and it's amazing, but it's a lot of work.
Yes.
Not a lot of reward yet, but it's also rewarding in just doing it. I have
And
to
doing
remember.
it. Yes. Yeah. And it is just about perseverance, sticking it out, because that's just a big part of it.
Yeah, looking at the big picture, not the instant gratification.
Yeah, and and you're going to hone things too. Like how you start out isn't, you're going to progress as to what you gravitate towards or what you want to focus on more and what you want to do. Like writing this book, if I ever have to write a book that difficult again, I just because it's so technical. And I mean, I did it in a really fun, easy way, but it was so hard, and it was so hard. And I was like, I'm not writing another book. And Spirit's like, yes, you are. And I'm like, no. And sure enough, I put together this class. I was doing this online class that I'm trying to put together. And in writing the outline of the class, I realized that was the next book. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I guess I have another book I'm going to be writing.
Good luck to you. I did a poetry book, and just doing that was a pain in the ass with all the formatting and everything.
Yeah.
Let alone like the other things that I want to work on later. I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot of work. So I have a lot of respect for people that do it.
Yeah. It takes a lot of self-discipline for anybody out there. If I'm sure a lot of you have thoughts and ideas to write something, to put a book out or a blog out. I will tell you, you cannot just sit there and wait for inspiration. You will never get that book done. It takes self-discipline. Put it on a calendar, make an appointment, and you sit down and you write, whether you feel like it or you don't. You sit there and you do it, because then it will come. And that's how you're going to get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah. My process is I write a little bit every day, just 15 minutes a day. And after a period of time, voila, there's a finished product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's, and you just do it. And the more you do it, then it just becomes part of your path, part of, a desire, like, oh, I better get writing.
Yeah, it's like learning to remove the obstructions by working that muscle, kind of like you talked about with the psychic abilities and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
What philosophy, spirituality, or like religions do you feel most aligned with your understanding? And could you please explain them as it like applies to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are bits of all religions that actually I can understand. And I really think when you are tapping into that universal energy, that one energy, then you realize that there's no one particular religion that's 100% right, but yet there's not one religion that's 100% wrong either. Like you could see where they're all getting it from, and you go, okay, I get it. They're putting this label on this one, and they're putting this label on that one, and that's okay. But I will say here is something that's very interesting. So there is something called a spiritualist. So and some people say spirituality. To me, spirituality is two different things. So spirituality can either be how you're living your life, right? Are you being a spiritual being? But spirituality is also a kind of a type of religion. So that's why it gets kind of confusing sometimes. So spiritualist is actually an actual religion, which I'm not sure if a lot of people know. So when I went to I have all this philosophy about spirit, how things work, my belief system, but I didn't really study with anyone at that time that really had that same fundamental philosophy about it. And I went to this Arthur Findlay College, which is spiritualist, and just sitting and talking, and I realized that I had the same philosophy. And I thought that was so surprising because I had never been there. I had never studied it. I didn't know. So it goes to show you that some beliefs we have come from a higher source. Some philosophies that we are taking on really are from a higher source. They're not just what we're learned and taught.
Absolutely. I can relate with a lot of that. I never knew about the spiritualist thing. Might be something good for me to look into. Like being in Ohio, I don't find many people with my belief structure at all, or anyone really. So it would be good to like find some connection, because I don't think that I'm alone in it. I just haven't met other people that line up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have to tell you, there are light workers everywhere I've had students in tiny little small deep south towns, and they feel like no one else is around, and yet the community is there. It is, once you really open up to your community, so what happens is you have to tell people what you do. You have to tell people who you are. And I think that that's what holds a lot of us back, is that fear of coming out of that spiritual closet. And once you do, though, that's how you're going to really see that you're not alone, that there's a lot of people that have the same thoughts, feelings, and belief systems that you do.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good point. I have this theory that like sometimes there's like a low concentration of, I don't want to say higher vibrational people, but people that are more switched on in the area, because it needs to be more dispersed. Like there's one other person I really can connect with on a deep level, but I also think that some of the people that I connect with that are further away are just spread out so they can affect other people. Like you don't want too much light in one spot.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense or if it's true, but what do you perceive as your life's purpose?
I believe it's really to help people, and I would hope to inspire and motivate them. So, but it's just about helping and loving. So nothing too radical. I push myself to work outside my own comfort level. I push myself to be more courageous in my own choices in how am I going to live that life purpose. But ultimately, my life purpose is simply to find a way to help other people on their journey.
Very, very well said. What do you need to do to feel that you are working towards that goal?
Absolutely reflection, looking at myself, going inward. Where am I stopping myself? How can I tell someone else to go for it? And where am I stopping myself? The other thing I don't do, though, and I see a lot of, and it's not that I'm discouraging, but a lot of people I will see tell someone, oh yeah, just go quit your job, just go do it. And I find that, again, to be really irresponsible, because someone may not be ready. You can't just quit everything you're doing to then do this work. You have to be ready. You have to have enough self-confidence and enough know-it-all and enough savviness to figure out how are you going to do it. And until you have those parts figured out, I say you need to keep your job, build and grow, then do it. People, there's a big misleading thing. Just do it and spirit will provide. And I don't think so. I mean, yeah, spirit supports and spirit helps you, and spirit, thank goodness, has always been there. But I will tell you, it is a lot of work to have your own business. And if you are going to leave the comfort of a regular job, which, because you want to explore it, you just have to be ready for the work involved too. It is rolling up your sleeves and getting in there. And so I feel like I want to help people do that, but do it responsibly, so that when they're kind of released into the world, they're ready. They're ready for clients. They're ready to tackle what needs to happen. They feel confident in who they are. They know what direction they want to go in. Just giving them those tools. So I do that, but a big part of it is me working outside of my own fear. I love being at home. I love my quiet little space. And yes, I'm in the middle of LA. And yes, I'm in like the heart of LA. And I love it here. But I'm not out partying. I'm not a big social person. So for me to get on a plane and go travel and then to stand up in front of a group and to demonstrate and to do it over, it takes a lot of inner courage. And I have to do that in order to kind of do that purpose to help other people. I have to look at my own fears. I have to be willing to face my own fears or my own insecurities or my own comfort level in order to help people move outside of their comfort levels or whatever they're perceiving as limitations for themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You do have to live it in order to talk about it effectively.
You do.
I like how that you threw out about like not quitting the job and all that stuff. I have done that before, like trying to follow dreams, like took out my whole safety net.
Yeah.
And had horrible consequences because of it. And it's definitely something that I think that people don't understand.
They don't plan enough. And again, it's, because they're listening to all these self-help books that go for it. And, but what will happen is, let's say you save up some money and then you quit your job because you think it's all going to come together. And you're just sitting there and you're waiting because you think the opportunities are going to just come to you. And they're not coming and you don't understand why. And then next thing you know, you deplete the savings. As you start to have those financial struggles, you're now going to have an enormous amount of stress. And that's actually going to lower your vibration. And it's going to make you even more cautious and more worried. And so it's actually going to be very counterproductive. And although opportunities do come to me, I have to tell you, 9 times out of 10, I manifest those opportunities because I'm putting something out there. I'm reaching out. I'm doing it. So again, you've got to get gritty. You've got to be ferocious and passionate about what you're doing. If you are not passionate, I don't see how you're going to be able to succeed doing it. It would be surprising to me because, there's ups and downs, both financially, emotionally, spiritually. And I think we really can have that success, but it's taken me a few years to really learn how do I do it.
That makes sense too. It's not going to happen overnight. I was talking to one of my buddies and he says people don't ever recognize the years of work behind an overnight success.
It's so true. It's so true. Yes, absolutely.
There's a couple more questions on here. If you had to describe your personal philosophy or condense your life experience into like 2 or 3 words, what would it be?
So my life experience, magical. I would say it's definitely magical. I would say unexpected and inspiring.
I like it. I like it. Who inspires you, since you talked about inspiring? I want to know who inspires somebody that is inspiring.
Well, I will say Oprah. Ever since I was a little girl, Oprah first came on TV. So I've really got to grow up with her. I can remember she would have been on at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I can remember, because I'd get done school and then I'd go home and watch Oprah. So I know that had to have been her time frame. And she just was so inspiring. And I remember just thinking, gosh, I want to grow up to be like Oprah. And I was a kid at that time. So to look at her and to see what she's built, not only as a woman and not only as an African-American woman, but as a leader, as a motivator. I mean, she really exposed the world so many incredible movers and shakers by sharing their stories, you know? And she really opened up spirituality in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And so I really feel like she inspires me a lot. And again, I am going to say Steve Jobs, rest his soul. But, you know, just looking at what that man did, think about him. This guy, what he was trying to do had never, ever, ever been done before. It wasn't even a thought except for something he had. And then he gets into a garage, works with his buddy to make it happen. And then no matter what happens, he never ever lets go of what he believes it should be. And not everyone liked it. You know, people thought he was controlling and people thought he was hardcore. But the thing is that he was passionate and he knew what his vision was and he wasn't going to settle for anything less. And the fact that he shares that, the fact that that's, you know, he doesn't just leave us a Mac machine. He leaves us with the ability to say, you can be different. You can be a round peg in a square hole, and that's okay. So I would say them. And my grandmom.
Nice.
And my grandmom.
Those are definitely good choices. What books would you recommend to others, or what books impacted you the most personally?
I will say, you know, a really great, there's a couple that are really good here. This one is really good. So You Want to Be a Medium by this lady, Rose. It's a phenomenal book because she covers so much about different aspects of mediumship and really helps people connect with their guides and things like that. So I personally think that that's a really good book. I will also say the 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. I highly recommend, if anyone has not gotten that book, to get it today. The 5-Second Rule basically motivates you. No more excuses, no more bailing out. It is very motivational with practical ways to kind of make changes in your life.
Awesome. I'll have to check those out. I have to go back through and make a list of all the books people have suggested because there's so many. My book list is like growing beyond what I'll be able to read in my lifetime. All right, Colby. Before we close out, I just wanted to ask if you could give me like a quick reading, however long you're comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. Sounds good. I really feel like for you, I am seeing this growth happen, right? And I feel like there's been like this burst. So it's almost like this light bulb, so to speak, or this inspiration. And I absolutely get this feeling you were either spoken to or it was really shown to you kind of your life path. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that was your aha moment. And so I feel like you're taking steps now to say, all right, I understand that aha moment. Now let me map it out, right? And I do feel like for you, you know, although you did that first book, so congratulations, I know that's amazing. I don't feel like it's your only book. And I do feel like you're going to get into a position where you're speaking more, engaging more, and helping other people to understand not just the poetry part, because I think that's really good, but also I feel like it's about sharing that pain and the darker periods and how did you get through those and what was it like being medicated and what was it like when you couldn't get people to see who you were and things like that, because I feel like that's a very intricate part of your story. And I just feel like I see you progressing in this whole path to a place where you are going to help people and motivate people, and really inspire them. I do see a move for you, but it doesn't feel like it's sudden. It doesn't feel like it's real soon, but I do see you moving. I do feel like you'll be moving out of Ohio. I'd be surprised in the next few years if you're still there. I feel like you're going to be going to somewhere that is a little more open, but you know, you're still going to need your space. So I know you don't like things too crowded for yourself. So does that make sense?
Spot on. Spot on. I already have other books that I started writing. It's just a matter of getting time. All that stuff makes sense because I want to speak to people. It's really what I want to do. And I am really in the mapping phase and doing the footwork to make a large goal into little pieces right now.
Yeah.
And then with the moving thing, I actually want to move. I lived in Northern California for 3 years at one point. I want to move to like Pacific Northwest again.
I was going to tell you that I was seeing more like maybe Washington or Seattle. I was seeing more of those areas because I got California, but then I heard, well, he doesn't like things too crowded. So I was like, okay, so it made me feel a little bit north of that. But I really feel like once you get back there, your soul is going to feel very, very peaceful, at rest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I miss the ocean. I miss the ocean and the mountains and the trees.
Yeah, and I think one thing too to think about, just maybe as a side hobby, maybe you sell it as recordings at some point, is spoken poetry, because I do feel like there's an aspect to that I see you doing as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do a poetry podcast as well. So it's like I have thought of recording it. I just need to do it. People tell me I have a very soothing voice, which I don't get, but whatever.
It's perfect. It is soothing. So I think it will really help people. And, you know, maybe that will lead to doing guided meditations for people and things along those lines.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that, Colby. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And people can also get their own readings from you on your site as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they can just right on the website. It has a book session, and they can book a session. So
okay, yeah. Awesome.
What I'll do is I'll add a code. So if you know they book within the next, when do you think this will air? Do you know the date?
I'll probably even edit it. I want to say today, but more likely I'll edit it tomorrow and post it tomorrow.
Okay, so what I'll do, just for your listeners, I'll put up a code, ROSS10, ROSS10. That will give any of your listeners 10% off of any session that they book. And I'll make it good through April 30th. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Colby. And I know that they will appreciate that as well. Hopefully people take you up on that and get a chance to chat with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Russ.
You're very welcome. I really appreciate you taking the time. This is like the last thing that I'll ask of you, and then you can get back to your day. I know that you're a busy woman. I've asked previous guests to kind of close the show in their own words, so you can have the last word and take us out with whatever you want.
Well, what I always like to close my Coffee with Colby is, get out there today, shine your light, and shine it bright.